My own son called me a burden, and then shut the door in my face on Christmas Eve. I stood there with gifts in my hands, listening to my grandchildren laugh inside a house I helped pay for, a house I wasn't allowed to enter. Before I continue, make sure you're subscribed, and tell me where you're watching this story from. My name is Caroline Harper, and I'm 64 years old. If you saw me walking down Maple Street on any ordinary morning, you wouldn't think anything special about me. Just a gray-haired woman in a warm coat, carrying a grocery bag or two, humming to herself as she walked back to her little apartment above the bakery. But I wasn't always alone. I used to have a house full of noise. Sunday breakfasts, birthday balloons taped to the walls, tiny shoes scattered near the door. My husband Mark passed away 12 years ago after a long battle with heart failure. And since then, my whole world had narrowed down to two things: my son, Daniel, and my hope that he'd still need me. Grief does strange things to a person. When Mark died, I poured myself into motherhood again, even though Daniel was already married and building his own life. I thought if I could stay useful, helpful, needed, I wouldn't feel the emptiness of my house so sharply. I worked part-time cleaning offices, took double shifts when my knees ached, stretched every dollar just to make sure I could be there whenever Daniel called. He didn't call much, but on the rare days, he did. Oh, I held on to those moments like small treasures. A text on Mother's Day, a photo of my grandkids, a quick, "Hey, Mom, can you help with this bill?" And I always said yes. Always. I guess when you love someone too much, you don't notice how the giving turns into drowning. Most mornings, my apartment smelled of cinnamon rolls from the bakery downstairs. I'd open the window just a crack and let the scent drift up. Outside, the city felt alive. Buses hissing to a stop, dogs barking, people rushing to work with coffee cups in hand. Inside my place, though, it was quiet. So quiet I could hear the clock ticking against the kitchen wall. Sometimes I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the families walking by, mothers holding toddlers' hands, grandmothers pushing strollers, laughter echoing as kids argued about whose turn it was to pick the next song. I used to imagine myself among them, strolling beside Daniel and his family. I used to imagine Christmas mornings filled with wrapping paper and sticky little fingers stealing cookies off my plate. But imagination was all I had. The truth was, I had become background to their lives, someone useful, not someone loved. Still, when December rolled around, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. A strange, soft hope that maybe this time things would be different. Maybe we could have a real Christmas together again, like the old days, before money, before distance, before the polite excuses that sliced like paper cuts. So I saved up. Every spare dollar, every coupon, every shift I could physically stand. I bought toys for the kids, a wool scarf for Daniel, and a beautiful gold-scented candle for Amber, his wife. I wrapped everything by hand, tied each bow with care, and drove through the snow with the kind of nervous excitement only a mother could understand. I didn't know then that the night I rang that doorbell was the night everything in my life would break. When I pulled into Daniel's driveway that Christmas Eve, fresh snow was falling, soft, glowing, untouched. Their neighborhood looked like something out of a holiday movie. Every house was wrapped in warm yellow lights, wreaths on doors, blow-up snowmen smiling on front lawns. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the lights flicker across their windows. Inside, I could hear laughter, muffled but unmistakable. Children? My grandchildren. My heart squeezed. I hadn't heard their laughter in months. I grabbed the bag of gifts from the passenger seat and walked up the steps, each breath forming little clouds in the air. For a second, I paused to fix my scarf and smooth my hair. I wanted to look presentable. Not poor, not tired, not like the woman who'd spent the last week cleaning office bathrooms just to afford those gifts. I rang the doorbell. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Daniel stood there, but not with the boyish smile he used to greet me with when he was small. His face held something tight, controlled, almost embarrassed. "Mom," he said, keeping his voice low, "what are you doing here?" What was I doing here? It felt like someone punched through my chest. I swallowed hard. I brought presents for the kids and dinner rolls. I thought maybe... Behind him, Amber appeared, holding a wine glass with her manicured fingers. Her red dress shimmered under the chandelier. Her lips curled into a polite smile, the kind a hostess gives a delivery driver. "Oh, Caroline," she said, drawing out every syllable. "We weren't expecting you." "I just wanted to surprise the kids," I said softly. "It's Christmas." Amber exchanged a glance with Daniel, a silent conversation, a decision made without me. Then she stepped closer and lowered her voice like she didn't want the guests inside to hear. "Tonight isn't appropriate for a family gathering," she said. "Dan's boss and co-workers are here. It's a professional event." My fingers tightened around the gift bag. A toy truck wrapped in Santa paper peeked from the top. "So, you're saying I can't come in?" Daniel sighed, his breath fogging in the cold air. "Mom, it's complicated. We don't want things to look..." "To look what?" I whispered. Amber touched his arm. "It's just... first impressions matter. And we're trying to present ourselves a certain way." A certain way. I knew what she meant. My coat was old. My boots were worn. My hands were cracked from scrubbing office floors. Her world was polished floors and expensive centerpieces. Mine was coupons and dollar store Christmas cards. "I promise we'll have you over another time," Daniel added, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just not tonight." I blinked, the cold burning my cheeks. "So I can't give the kids their presents?" "They already have so many toys," Amber said with a sympathetic shrug. "But I can take the bag." "I'll give it to them for you." Number. No, she wouldn't. She'd toss the clothes in a closet, the toys in a pile, the scarf for Daniel in a drawer he'd never open. But the worst part? I wouldn't get to see their faces when they opened them. But I still handed her the bag, my fingers shaking, because that's what mothers do. We keep trying, even when it hurts. "Merry Christmas," I whispered. Before I could add anything else, Daniel said it. The sentence that cracked something inside me forever. "Mom, please don't take this the wrong way. But Christmas isn't really a place for people who aren't doing well. People who aren't doing well." A nicer phrasing of the word loser. And it came from my son. Amber eased the door shut, slow but firm, until all I saw was wood and wreath. And I stood there alone on the porch, the snow falling on my hair, realizing that night I wasn't part of their Christmas at all. I don't remember walking back to my car. I only remember the sting inside my chest, sharp and hot like someone had carved a hole right through me and left it open to the winter air. The gifts were gone from my hands. The laughter inside the house kept echoing in my ears. And Daniel's voice. "Christmas isn't a place for people who aren't doing well." People who aren't doing well? People like me. I sat in the driver's seat staring at the glowing windows of their home. Someone inside raised a toast. Music played. Children squealed with joy. My grandchildren, my blood, celebrating 20 feet away, without me. I started the engine and drove off, slow at first, then faster as the tears blurred the road ahead. Snowflakes battered the windshield like tiny accusations. By the time I reached my small apartment, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the key in the lock. Inside, everything felt colder than outside. I turned on the lamp. The light flickered, casting long shadows against the wall. I took off my coat and hung it on the hook by the door. The fabric felt rough between my fingers, Old, worn, patched at the elbows. Funny. I had never noticed how threadbare it was until Amber's eyes traveled over it hours earlier. The silence was suffocating, so I filled the kettle, set it on the stove, and sank into the chair by the window. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug of tea, but the heat didn't calm the shaking. That night, I didn't cry the way a broken-hearted person cries. I cried the way a person cries when they finally see the truth after years of refusing to look at it. Because the truth was brutal. I wasn't a mother to them. I was an ATM. A spare tire kept in the trunk until something went wrong. And the worst part? I had let it happen. Every, sure, I'll cover it. Every, don't worry, I've got it. Every, you can pay me back later, when they never did. I had trained them to treat me like a resource, not a person. As the hours passed, the numbness turned into something else. Not rage, not spite. Something clearer, sharper, clarity, pure, cutting clarity. I stood up and walked to the small desk where my laptop sat. The screen lit up my face in the dark like a spotlight. I logged into my bank account. There it was, a whole map of my mistakes. $550 automatic transfer to Daniel every month. Shared mortgage payment I quietly covered whenever he and Amber fell behind. Car insurance I paid because they were tight that month. Kids' activities I funded because they deserved opportunities. Random emergencies that had become routine, I stared at the total. I had spent over $40,000 on them in the last few years. $40,000 on people who wouldn't even let me step inside their house on Christmas Eve. My mouse hovered over the cancel automatic transfer button. My breath shook. My heart raced. My fingers trembled. Could I really do it? Could I really stop being their safety net? Then it hit me. They hadn't worried about hurting me. So why was I worried about protecting them? Click. Transfer canceled. Click. Mortgage payment authorization canceled. Click. Insurance canceled. With every click, something inside me shifted. Something heavy fell away. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Tired but light. I closed the laptop, exhaled, and whispered to the empty room. No more. Not ever again. It was the softest sentence I ever spoke, but the strongest decision I ever made. And I didn't know it then, but that quiet decision was about to blow Daniel's perfect world wide open. For the first time in years, I woke up the next morning without checking my phone to see if Daniel needed something, without calculating bills in my head, without that pressure in my chest, the pressure of being everyone's solution. It was strangely quiet. I made eggs. I brewed coffee. I read a few pages of a book I'd been meaning to start. And although there was a knot of worry in my stomach, there was also something new. Peace. Real, actual peace. It lasted exactly 12 days. On the 13th morning, as I was slicing apples in my tiny kitchen, my phone buzzed on the counter. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer. He called again and again, 3 times in 5 minutes. Then the messages started. Mom, did something happen with the mortgage? Why didn't the car insurance go through? Call me back. This is serious. I wiped my hands on a towel and stared at the screen. My heart thumped, but I didn't reply. For years, I had been their invisible net. They didn't feel gravity because I carried it for them. Now gravity was finally doing its job. That night, he called 5 more times. I let each one ring until it stopped. Then came a longer message. Mom, the bank said we're behind 2 payments. They're threatening fees. Did you forget to send your part? Your part. As if I lived there. As if I owed them my last breath. I put the phone face down, turned off the lights, and went to bed. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Daniel. His hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept. His fancy winter coat was unzipped despite the cold. He kept shifting from foot to foot like someone who'd been pacing for hours. "Mom, please," he said through the door. "I need to talk to you." I didn't open it, not because I was cruel, but because I wasn't ready. For years, I had let guilt open the door. This time, guilt stayed silent. He kept knocking. "Mom, the mortgage is overdue. They said we're close to default. Why didn't you make the payment like always? Like always." Those words stung more than anything. He wasn't asking why I had been helping. He was asking why I stopped. "I need $8,000, he said, voice rising with desperation. "By Friday." "Mom, please, I'm begging you. Amber is freaking out. We're losing everything." He hit the door with the side of his fist. "Mom, open the door!" I backed away quietly, my heart pounding, but my feet steady. He didn't know I stood only a few feet away. After a few minutes, his voice cracked. "Mom, please." "I can't lose this house. I can't lose everything." That's when I realized something painful and clear. He didn't come for me. He came for what I could give him. Eventually, his knocking stopped. His footsteps faded down the hallway. I waited 5 minutes before I exhaled and unlocked my knees, which I didn't even realize had gone stiff. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Was I wrong? Was I heartless? Was I abandoning my own son? Then, like a soft whisper, the truth settled. Helping someone who uses you is not love. It's self-destruction. The next morning, my phone chimed non-stop. Messages from Amber this time. "This is ridiculous, Caroline. We have kids. Don't punish them. Be mature. Fix this. You know we count on you. Count on me." That was the problem. 3 more days passed, and then things got worse. Far worse. On the 4th morning, I heard shouting outside my building. At first, I thought it was just neighbors arguing again. This apartment complex wasn't exactly known for serenity. But then I recognized the voices. One was high-pitched, sharp, panicked. Amber. The other was Daniel. I peeked through my curtain. There they were, in the middle of the parking lot, fighting like 2 people whose entire world had been yanked out from under them. Amber's mascara streaked down her cheeks. Daniel's voice cracked with every sentence. "You should have told me the credit cards were maxed," he shouted. "What was I supposed to do?" she snapped. "You told me your mom was helping. You said she'd always help." My stomach dropped. Always help. Like a guarantee. Like a subscription. Amber pointed a shaking finger at him. "The bank gave us until Friday." "Friday, Dan. Where are we supposed to get $8,000? "I'm trying," he yelled back. "She won't answer. She won't open the door." Amber grabbed her hair with both hands. "Then force her. Go to her job. Sit outside her door. Do whatever you have to do. We are not downsizing. I am not living in some cheap apartment." My breath caught. She wasn't crying from sadness. She was crying because her lifestyle was slipping out of reach. I watched them argue until their voices became nothing but echoes in cold winter air. Finally, they got into their SUV, still uninsured, still technically illegal to drive, and sped off. I stood at the window long after they left, the weight of everything pressing on me. But the truth? I still didn't know the half of it. That came 2 days later. I had just finished cleaning Mrs. Holloway's kitchen when she stopped me as I grabbed my jacket. "You look pale, Caroline," she said gently. "Is everything all right?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. Where would I even begin? She patted my hand the way only older women can. Warm, wise, steady. "You don't have to explain," she said. "But let me tell you something. Some children use their parents more than they love them, and sometimes it takes a shock for the parent to see it." Her words hit deeper than I expected. When I left her house, I drove home slowly, letting her voice echo through my mind. Use more than love. Was that what Daniel had done? I wasn't ready to face the answer, but the answer found me first. The next afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Not frantic like Daniel, not polite like a neighbor. This knock was firm, professional. A woman stood there, late 60s, silver hair, crisp beige coat. She held herself like someone who didn't tolerate nonsense. "Are you Caroline Harper?" she asked. "Yes, I'm Evelyn Woods. I live next door to your son before the foreclosure notice arrived." My heart jolted. "Is everything okay?" She shook her head. "No, and you need to know something before he drags you back into his mess." I let her in. She sat at my small kitchen table, folded her hands, and looked me straight in the eye. "I'm going to be blunt," she said. "Your son and his wife didn't just rely on you. They strategized around you." "Strategized?" I whispered. "Yes, for months, maybe years." She took out an envelope and slid it to me. Inside were printed bank screenshots, credit alerts, even delivery invoices. "Amber has a compulsive shopping problem," she said. "Designer clothes, jewelry, vacations. She was hiding it from Daniel by juggling credit minimums with the money you sent." I stared at the papers as if they belonged to someone else's life. "And your son," she paused, "he checked your bank account every month." My eyes shot up. "What?" "He used the cosigner access from the mortgage paperwork. Not to manage the loan, no, to see how much you had, to know how much he could safely ask for without draining you completely." My chest felt like it collapsed. Evelyn placed her hand over mine. "Caroline, you were their financial plan." Those 7 words sliced through every fragile excuse I'd ever made for him, every request, every emergency, every time he turned cold when I couldn't give more. It wasn't desperation, it was calculation. I covered my mouth as my vision blurred. Evelyn squeezed my shoulder. "I'm telling you this because I went through the same thing 20 years ago. And no one warned me. I don't want you to make the same mistake." I closed my eyes. This time, the tears didn't fall from sadness. They fell from truth. And the truth was uglier than anything I had imagined. For the rest of that day, I sat in my silent apartment with Evelyn's words echoing inside my skull. "You were their financial plan." It replayed again and again until it no longer felt like a sentence. It felt like a diagnosis. By evening, something inside me hardened. Not bitterness, not revenge, resolve. The next morning, at exactly 10:15 a.m., I received a phone call from an unknown number. "Mrs. Harper? This is attorney Michael Brooks from Heritage Bank Services. I'm overseeing the foreclosure review on the Maple Drive property. I need to speak with you in person about irregularities." My stomach tightened. "Irregularities? It's better discussed face to face. Are you available today?" I didn't know what waited for me, but something told me I needed to go. At the bank, Attorney Brooks guided me into a glass-walled conference room. He was mid-50s, calm eyes, steady voice, the kind of man who didn't waste words. He placed a folder in front of me. "What I'm about to show you may be difficult," he said. He opened the folder. Page 1, mortgage documents. Page 2, income verification attachments. Page 3, account inquiries. But it was page 4 that made my breath stop. "Your son accessed your financial records 18 times in the last year," he said, "without renewing authorization." I stared at the page, the dates, the times. Some were late at night. Others were right after he had asked me for money. "He didn't do this to manage the mortgage," Brooks said gently. "He did it to track your available balance." It allowed him to plan requests. My hands shook. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't overreacting. He had monitored me like a resource, like an account, like a supply. Brooks continued, Given this pattern and the evidence of dependency and misrepresentation, we believe you have grounds to file for release from the co-signer liability due to manipulation and unauthorized access. He pushed a pen toward me. If you want to protect yourself, Mrs. Harper, this is your chance. I stared at the pen. For years, every signature I'd given Daniel destroyed a little bit of my life. This one would save it. I'll do it, I whispered. 3 days later, the legal notices were delivered to Daniel's apartment. He called 27 times in 1 hour. I didn't answer. Then the texts flooded in. Are you insane? You're ruining us. Do you want your grandkids homeless? How could you do this to your own son? But then came the one that showed his real fear. Without you, we can't fix this. Exactly. That was the point. That evening he showed up at my door again, but this time he wasn't desperate. He was furious. "Open the door," he shouted, pounding hard enough to rattle the frame. "Mom, we need to talk." I didn't move. "You can't do this to me," he yelled. "To us." My heart raced, but my voice stayed calm, steady even. I spoke loudly enough for him to hear through the door. "Daniel, you did this to yourself." Silence. A stunned, wounded silence. Then he muttered something, maybe a curse, maybe a plea, and stormed away, his footsteps fading down the hall. I stood there, hands shaking, but not with fear, with strength. Because for the first time in my life, Daniel had felt the one thing he had always shielded himself from: consequences. Attorney Brooks updated me a week later. The bank accepted my petition. My name was removed from the mortgage. The entire financial responsibility was transferred to Daniel and Amber. Their world had finally fallen onto their own shoulders. And mine? Mine was finally lifting. But the collapse of their life wasn't over yet. In fact, the real fallout was still on its way. 2 weeks after the bank removed my name from the mortgage, the fallout finally hit. I was washing dishes when my phone rang. Not Daniel, not Amber, a social worker. "Mrs. Harper, your name is listed as an emergency contact for your grandchildren." My heart nearly stopped. "Are they all right?" I asked, gripping the counter. "They're safe," she said quickly, "but their living situation is unstable. Their mother moved back to her family's place out of state, and their father, well, he's struggling to provide consistent care. We're considering temporary kinship placement. Kinship placement. A polite, official way of saying the children need somewhere stable. And you're it." I sat down slowly. The last time Daniel had needed me, it was for money. This time, it wasn't him asking. It was fate. The next morning, I met with the social worker, Andrea, at the Family Services Center. She was kind, calm, patient, everything someone in her job needed to be. "Mrs. Harper," she said, "Marcus and Lily adore you. Their mother mentioned that you've always been the most stable person in their lives." My breath hitched. Amber had said that? The same woman who shut the door in my face? "Temporary custody would be about 6 months," Andrea continued, "just until things settle. You will not be financially responsible. Support will be provided, and you can set boundaries with both parents' boundaries, a word I had only learned recently." I nodded slowly. "I need to think," I said. "Of course," she replied. "But these children need someone who won't disappear." That sentence pierced straight through me, because despite everything, I had never disappeared. I had been buried, used, silenced, but I had never disappeared. I went home and sat in my quiet kitchen, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. I didn't see the worn-out woman who stood on Daniel's porch last Christmas. I saw someone stronger, someone who could protect, not enable, someone who could love without losing herself. I picked up the phone. "Andrea," I said, "tell me what paperwork I need." 3 days later, Marcus and Lily walked into my apartment with their backpacks and stuffed animals. Marcus looked nervous, shoulders hunched. Lily ran straight into my arms. "Grandma," she squealed, "do we really get to stay with you?" "Yes, baby," I whispered into her hair. "You're safe here." Marcus looked up at me, his voice small. "Grandma, is this because we did something wrong?" I knelt in front of him. "No, sweetheart. This happened because the grown-ups made mistakes. You did nothing wrong, and you're not alone." Something in his face softened, just a little. We settled into a routine quickly. Breakfast together, school drop-offs, bedtime stories, quiet evenings with cartoons and hot chocolate. My tiny apartment, once painfully silent, was filled with life again. Not chaos, not demands, not manipulation. Life. Daniel came for his supervised visit 3 weeks later. He looked thinner, older, deflated in a way I'd never seen. When he saw the kids run into my living room, laughing, something in his eyes broke, and not from anger this time. "Mom," he said softly, "thank you." I didn't say, "You're welcome." Not this time. Instead, I nodded. "Get better, Daniel." For them, not for me. He wiped his eyes and whispered, "I'm trying." For once, I believed him. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after he shut the door in my face, I sat on the floor of my little living room while Marcus and Lily decorated the small tree with paper ornaments they made at school. Snow fell outside, soft, quiet, gentle. Lily climbed into my lap. "Grandma, this is the best Christmas ever." I kissed the top of her head. "You know what?" I said. "I think it's mine too." Because this time, the warmth in the room wasn't bought with sacrifice. It wasn't forced. It wasn't conditional. It was real, soft, honest, peaceful. I had finally stopped bleeding for people who didn't care, and in doing so, I discovered the people who did.